Iceland, the tribe of Benjamin. The descendants of the lost 10 tribes of Israel are to be found in the nations of northwestern Europe and in their descendants across the world. And we can in particular trace the descendants of the tribe of Benjamin to the people of Iceland. Now, the tribe of Benjamin in the Bible, it was God's protected favorite. When Moses blessed the 12 tribes of Israel, we read about Benjamin. We quote from Deuteronomy. And of Benjamin he said, "The beloved of the Lord shall dwell in safety by him, and the Lord shall cover him all the day long, and he shall dwell between his shoulders." Unquote. Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 12. Thus, Iceland has never been invaded since the first Icelandic parliament, the Althing. It was formed in AD 930, and the same can hardly be said about any other nation in northwestern Europe. The smallest of the tribes of Israel. After the 12th century BC, the tribe of Benjamin was numerically the smallest of the tribes of Israel. The tribe of Benjamin's territory was also one of the smallest, but it was also one of the most important in Israel, because the city of Jerusalem was situated in the territory of Benjamin. And likewise today, the Icelandic people is also one of the smallest of the peoples of northwestern Europe. They must be the smallest of the peoples of northwestern Europe, at least the ones that have an independent country of their own. For example, the Faroe Islanders, the people that inhabit the Faroe Islands, they are numerically smaller, approximately 50,000, but they don't have full independence. They are still a part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Icelandic men and women have different origins. In AD 874, the Norwegian chief Ingolfur Arnason was the first to settle permanently in Iceland. The later Norse settlers were primarily Norwegians, but there were also Danes, Swedes and Norse Gals from among them. Geneticists from Oxford University have shown that the Icelandic people by and large descend from Norsemen and Celtic women. These geneticists, they write that, quote, "Numerous slaves were captured by the Vikings in their raids on the coastlines of the British Isles, and many of the slaves were taken to Iceland. The majority of these slaves seem likely to have been female." Unquote. Benjamite men and women also of different origins. Like the modern Icelandic people, the tribe of Benjamin's men and women were also descended from different tribes. In the 12th century BC, the tribe of Benjamin was at war against the other 11 tribes of Israel. And in this war, all the women of the tribe of Benjamin were killed and only 600 Benjamite men survived. And we read about that in the book of Judges, chapters 11 to 21. So in order that the tribe of Benjamin would be able to survive the other 11 tribes of Israel, they fetched 400 female virgins, Israelite virgins, from the city of Jabesh Gilead, and gave them to the men of Benjamin for wives. And then they also let the other Benjamites take some other Israelite virgins from a festival in Shiloh. And we read about that in the book of Judges, chapter 21. Now, when the patriarch Israel blessed his 12 sons, he said of Benjamin, we quote from the book of Genesis, "Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil." Unquote, from Genesis chapter 49, verse 27. And this prophecy was fulfilled both in the tribe of Benjamin in the 12th century BC and also in the formation of the Icelandic people in the 10th century AD, because they are one and the same tribe. Benjamin and Joseph. The patriarch Benjamin had only one full brother, and that was Joseph, and their mother was Rachel. The other 10 patriarchs, they had the same father but different mothers. And those that studied the tribes of Israel, they almost all agree that the United Kingdom is primarily of Joseph, and in particular of the tribe of Ephraim. Ephraim was one of Joseph's 2 sons and formed a separate tribe. Then there is a Swiss DNA analysis institute which compares the DNA of modern indigenous European peoples with the DNA of peoples of antiquity, and they've shown that the United Kingdom is 75% Celtic and 13% Germanic and 12% Viking, while the Republic of Ireland is 88% Celtic and 12% Viking. And the Icelandic people, as we mentioned already, they are both of Norse and Celtic ancestry, and they are therefore just as related to the peoples of the British Isles as they are to the peoples of Scandinavia. For instance, Norway is 88% Viking and 12% Germanic, and Denmark is 60% Viking and 40% Germanic. Geography of Benjamin and Iceland. When the 12 tribes of Israel lived in the land of Israel, Benjamin's territory was around Jerusalem, which was the main city in Benjamin's territory. Benjamin shared borders with the tribes of Ephraim, Judah, Dan, and Reuben. Like Benjamin shared borders with the tribe of Ephraim, so is one of Iceland's closest neighbors the United Kingdom, which is the tribe of Ephraim. And like Benjamin shared borders with the tribes of Judah and Dan, so was Iceland a part of the Kingdom of Denmark between 1380 and 1944. Now Denmark consists primarily of the tribe of Dan through the Danes, and also partly of the tribe of Judah through the Jutes. There is also another geographical similarity between Benjamin and Iceland. In the Old Testament, the 12 tribes of Israel were divided into two main blocks or two main houses. The house of Israel in the north, which consisted of the northern 10 tribes, and the house of Judah in the south, which consisted of the southern 2 tribes. Then, when the 12 tribes of Israel were going to be united into a united kingdom of Israel, they chose as their capital Jerusalem in the territory of Benjamin, which was a sort of a compromised capital because it was, strictly speaking, not in the territory of the northern house of Israel, and strictly speaking, not in the territory of the house of Judah. Strictly speaking, Benjamin was a part of the northern house of Israel, but eventually, when the 12 tribes were divided, Benjamin got to belong to the southern house of Judah. And Iceland's geographic similarity with Benjamin is this. Today, the bulk of the descendants of the lost 10 tribes of Israel live in two big places, Europe and North America. There's also other places where smaller parts live, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and the state of Israel, where the Jews live, who are of the 2 tribes of Judah. But anyway, the bulk of the descendants of the lost 10 tribes of Israel live in Europe and North America. Now, Iceland is usually considered to be a part of Europe, but in a geographic or tectonic sense, Iceland is actually divided between Europe and North America, because the North American plate, tectonic plate, and the Eurasian tectonic plate runs right through Iceland. So Iceland, strictly speaking, is both a part of North America and Europe in a tectonic or geological sense. So like Iceland is between North America and Europe, so was the tribe of Benjamin also between the house of Israel in the Old Testament and the house of Judah. And the picture we see here, that is Þingvellir in Iceland, which was also where the first Icelandic parliament, the Althing, was. And this is a place where the tectonic plates divide. So the ridge on the left, that's the North American tectonic plate, and then the big plain to the right, that's between the North American plate and another smaller plate that lies between the North American tectonic plate and the Eurasian plate. So you can get the idea of how the two tectonic plates are dividing here in Iceland. Benjamin and Dan. Not only were Benjamin and Dan neighboring tribes, but in the biblical lists of the tribes there is sometimes a special connection between Benjamin and Dan. When the 12 tribes are listed in the Bible, the tribes which have a common mother, they are usually listed together. For example, Joseph and Benjamin, and Dan and Naphtali, and Gad and Asher, etc. But in some places, Dan is mentioned together with Joseph and Benjamin. For example, in Ezekiel's description of the gates of the New Jerusalem, there are 3 gates on the east side. We quote, and 3 gates, and 1 gate of Joseph, 1 gate of Benjamin, and 1 gate of Dan, unquote, from Ezekiel chapter 48, verse 32. And here, Gad, Asher, and Naphtali are listed separately. And also in the book of 1 Chronicles, Dan is again listed along with Joseph and Benjamin, while Naphtali, Gad, and Asher are mentioned separately. We quote, "These are the sons of Israel, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun, Dan, Joseph, and Benjamin, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher," unquote, from the book of 1 Chronicles chapter 2, verse 1-2. And this is another biblical parallel to Iceland's special relationship with Denmark. Adam Rutherford's Iceland book. Adam Rutherford, he was a Scottish scholar on the tribes of Israel, and in May 1937 he wrote a book called Iceland's Great Inheritance, where he identified the Icelandic people with the Israelite tribe of Benjamin. He said that the Icelandic people were the descendants of the tribe of Benjamin. And also Adam Rutherford calculated the so-called 7 times, where he calculated or predicted that Iceland would gain complete independence sometime around 1941. Now these 7 times, they are 2,520 years. They are calculated by 7 times 360 years. So these 7 times are 2,520 years, where Israel, after having sinned, would be liable to be oppressed by other nations. So Adam Rutherford counted 2,520 years from the fall of Jerusalem in 603 BC, and then he arrived at AD 1918, and 2,520 years from the final deportation of the tribe of Benjamin in 580 BC, and then he arrived at AD 1941. And what actually happened in world history was that in 1918, Iceland gained independence from Denmark, but stayed within a personal union with Denmark, which meant that the King of Denmark was also the King of Iceland. And then in 1944, Iceland completely seceded from the Kingdom of Denmark and became an independent republic. But Adam Rutherford wrote in his book, and remember, these are words written in 1937, more than 2 years before the outbreak of World War II. We quote, "The black clouds of trouble are gathering fast over the nations of continental Europe and Asia, and it is but a short time till the terrible Holocaust foretold will be precipitated. But Iceland will be the bright spot on earth, for the Creator has arranged for Iceland to be free from militarism and from religious controversies, in order that this little nation may be a Christian example to the great nations of the world. Through the deliverance of Iceland, the Almighty will demonstrate to the world His great love and care over a defenseless nation who worship Him in sincerity and truth," unquote, from Adam Rutherford's book, Iceland's Great Inheritance. So these words must be said to be some kind of prophetic words written in 1937. And remember that, or note that Adam Rutherford actually used the word Holocaust in May 1937 and predicted that this would take place. And when Germany occupied Denmark in 1940, the United Kingdom occupied Iceland, but that was some kind of friendly occupation. In other words, the people of Iceland, they were glad that the British, quote-unquote, occupied Iceland. And then in 1941, the British forces, they were replaced by American ones, but within an agreement with the Icelandic home rule. And then in 1944, Iceland gained complete independence from the Kingdom of Denmark and became an independent republic. But these words by Adam Rutherford, they must be said to be some kind of prophetic words when he could calculate or predict in 1937 that Iceland would gain complete independence from Denmark sometime around 1941, when they actually did gain complete independence in 1944, only 3 years later. And remember that Adam Rutherford made this prediction or calculation based on the fact that he believed that the people of Iceland were the literal fleshly descendants of the Israelite tribe of Benjamin.